My name is Claire Bardin. I'm 31, and about 10 weeks ago, my father sent me an email, not a call, not a text, an email, letting me know that my brother's rehearsal dinner was going to be an intimate affair, his words. He wrote it the way someone writes a polite rejection letter for a job you never applied to. We want to keep the evening focused on Derek and Vanessa. Given the limited seating, we think it's best if you join us for the ceremony itself. That way, everyone's comfortable. Everyone. Comfortable. I read it sitting on my apartment floor in Austin with a bowl of cold rice on the coffee table and my dog pressed against my leg. I didn't cry. I think I'd used that up a long time ago. My brother Derek is 3 years older. He was the one who got the trophies displayed on the mantel, the one whose law school acceptance became a dinner party announcement, the one my father introduced to people with his full name and a handshake like he was presenting a diplomat. I was the other one, the younger one, the one who drew things. That's how my family talked about it. Claire draws things, like it was a nervous habit, like I chewed my nails or cracked my knuckles, and they were waiting for me to outgrow it. What I actually did, what I'd been doing since I was 14, was design. Buildings, spaces, structures that people would walk into and feel something shift in their chest without knowing why. But nobody in my house ever asked me to explain the difference between drawing things and what I was actually doing, so I stopped trying to bridge that gap around the time I turned 16 and started letting the work speak for itself, even if the room was empty. I went to architecture school at UT Austin on a scholarship I applied for alone. My mother helped me pack. That was her contribution. She folded my towels and put a card in my suitcase that said, "We're rooting for you," which was kind, genuinely kind, and also the last time anyone in my family engaged with my career in a way that felt personal. My father thought architecture was impractical. He'd wanted me in business or law, something with a clear track, something he could describe at his firm's holiday party without having to pause and figure out the right words. My brother thought it was fine, in the way people think wallpaper is fine. Present, ignorable, not worth a second look. So I built my life without them looking. 5 years of school, 2 years interning at a firm in Dallas where the senior partner screamed at everybody equally, which was at least democratic, and where I learned more about structural integrity and client politics than any classroom ever taught me. Then a position at a boutique firm in Austin doing residential work that slowly, quietly, started getting attention. Then I went out on my own. I opened my own studio 14 months ago. It's a 2-room office above a print shop on South Congress with exactly enough space for me, one associate, and a drafting table I bought at an estate sale that I'm irrationally attached to. We design private homes, small ones mostly, the kind of houses where every window is placed on purpose and the light does something specific at 4 in the afternoon. 7 months ago, a project I'd designed, a house outside Marfa for a retired couple who wanted to feel like they were living inside the landscape, was selected for the AIA Small Project Award. 4 months after that, Dwell magazine featured it as their cover story. The photograph showed the house at dusk, glass and cedar and desert rock, the sky behind it going violet. The headline read, "The Architect Who Builds for the Light." I did not tell my family any of this. Not out of spite, not to set up some future reveal. I didn't tell them because they had never asked, and I had learned, slowly, over years, the way you learn the shape of a room by bumping into its walls in the dark, that offering things to people who don't reach for them is its own kind of wound. So I stopped offering. My mother knew I did architecture. She described it to her friends like it was a temp job. Claire's doing something with buildings right now. We'll see where it goes. My father, when pressed, would say I was finding herself, which is a phrase people use about their children when they haven't bothered to look at what's already been found. The rehearsal dinner was at Langford's, which is a well-regarded restaurant in the city where my parents live, about 2 hours from Austin. Derek's fiancée, Vanessa, comes from a family that owns car dealerships across 3 counties and treats dinner reservations like diplomatic summits. The rehearsal dinner was 40 people. My father had chosen the venue because Vanessa's parents had mentioned, apparently more than once, that they appreciated establishments with a sense of design. Here is where I need to tell you something I did not know the night of the dinner. 2 things happened on the same day that had nothing to do with each other and everything to do with timing. The first, Architectural Digest published their annual AD 100, a list of the 100 most noteworthy architects and designers working in America. My studio had been included, not just listed, profiled. The piece had gone live that morning at 6 a.m. It included photographs of 3 projects, the Marfa House prominent among them, a quote from a client, and an interview I'd done over the phone 2 months earlier while eating a breakfast taco in my car because I'd been running late to a site visit and the journalist had already rescheduled twice. The quote they pulled was this: "I grew up in a family that didn't really have a language for what I did. They weren't cruel about it, they just didn't see it. So I learned to build things that insist on being seen. Every house I design is an argument against invisibility." The second thing, Langford's, the restaurant hosting Derek's rehearsal dinner, had been renovated 8 months prior. The renovation had been designed by a former classmate of mine, a woman named Priya, who had contacted me during the project to consult on the lighting plan for the private dining room. I'd spent 2 afternoons helping her with the layout. My name appeared in the design credits printed on a small brass plaque near the entrance of the private dining space, the exact room where my brother's rehearsal dinner was being held. I was at my drafting table when my phone started going off. I didn't answer it. I was working on elevations for a house in Fredericksburg, and I was in that state where your hand and your eye are working together and the rest of the world goes soft. My phone buzzed 11 times before I finally looked at it around 10:30. 9 missed calls. 4 from my mother, 2 from an aunt, 1 from my brother, 1 from a number I didn't recognize, 1 from my grandmother, who is 81 and does not call after 9 unless someone has died or she's furious. I called my grandmother first. She picked up before the first ring finished. "Claire Louise Bardin," she said, which is how I knew this was serious. "Hey, Grandma, why in the world am I finding out from a magazine that my granddaughter is on a list of the best architects in this country?" And that's how I found out about the AD 100. She read me the profile, all of it, slowly. She mispronounced cantilevered 3 times and didn't care. When she got to the quote, the one about invisibility, she stopped. I heard her breathing. Then she said, very quietly, "That's about us, isn't it? That's about this family." I said, "It's about the work, Grandma." She said, "Don't protect us from the truth, honey. We earned that sentence." Here is what happened at the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't there, but I heard it from 3 different sources within 12 hours, so I have the geometry of it, even if I don't have every word. Dinner was set for 7. The private dining room at Langford's is a beautiful space. Priya did exceptional work, with those pendant lights I helped her select hanging above a long walnut table. The brass plaque with the design credits was on the wall just inside the door, small enough to miss if you weren't looking.
Vanessa's older brother was looking. He's the kind of person who reads everything on every wall of every room he enters. He read the plaque. He looked up. "Bardin?" he said, loud enough for the near end of the table to hear. "Claire Bardin did the lighting consult for this room? Any relation?" My mother, who was adjusting a centerpiece, said, "Pardon?" He showed her the plaque. She read it. She looked at my father. My father looked at the plaque as though it had appeared there specifically to inconvenience him. "That's our daughter," my mother said after a pause. "She does design work." "She does more than design work," Vanessa's brother said, and then he pulled out his phone. By the time the appetizers arrived, Vanessa's entire side of the table had the Architectural Digest article open on their screens. The Marfa house, the profile, my photograph, taken in my studio, standing beside that estate sale drafting table, arms crossed, looking directly into the camera with an expression that I've been told reads as either calm confidence or quiet defiance, depending on who's looking. Vanessa's mother put her phone down and turned to mine. "You must be so proud. AD 100? That's extraordinary." My mother smiled. The smile she uses when she's been caught without a prepared answer and needs to buy time. "We've always known she was talented. She's just very private about her work, doesn't share much with us." My aunt, who was seated 4 chairs down and has the hearing of a bat, said without looking up from her bread plate, "She invited you to the Dwell cover party 6 months ago. You said you had a conflict." This is true. I had. The magazine threw a small event in Austin when the cover issue came out. I'd called my mother and invited her and my father. My mother had said they'd try, and then the day before, she'd texted that something had come up with Derek's wedding planning, and they couldn't make it. The something, I later learned, was a cake tasting. They chose cake over my magazine cover. My aunt continued, because my aunt always continues, "And she sent you the Marfa house photos last Christmas. You told me they looked like a nice cabin." The table had gotten quiet. Not uncomfortable yet, but close. That particular frequency of silence where strangers realize they're watching something private unfold in a public room. My father cleared his throat. "This is Derek's night. Let's keep the focus where it should be." Vanessa's father, who is apparently a man who says exactly what he's thinking at all times and has the car dealership fortune to back it up, said pleasantly, "Hell, if my daughter was on the AD 100, I'd bring the magazine to every dinner I attended for a year. You've got 2 impressive kids. That's worth celebrating." Derek said nothing during any of this. I know that because my cousin, who was seated beside him, told me afterward, but he spent most of the exchange staring at his water glass with an expression she described as buffering. The dinner continued. The food was good. The lighting, I'm told, was perfect. Warm without being dim, bright enough to read the menu, but soft enough that the room felt intimate. I know this because I helped design it that way. By dessert, 3 separate guests had congratulated my parents on the AD 100 feature. Each time my mother said some version of, "Thank you, we're very proud," in a voice that sounded like someone doing a table read of a script they'd received 5 minutes before the show. The rehearsal dinner was not entirely about Derek. I say that with no satisfaction. I hadn't planned it. I hadn't even known it was happening. But the thing about building something real is that it exists whether you're in the room or not. It has weight. It takes up space. And sometimes it walks into the rooms you've been excluded from and sits down without being invited. Derek called me the next morning. It was early. I was making coffee, and the light was just coming through the kitchen window in that thin blue way it does before it turns gold. "The AD 100, Claire? Really?" His voice was flat. Not angry exactly, more like the sound of someone rearranging furniture in their head. "You couldn't have mentioned that before my rehearsal dinner?" I said, "You didn't invite me to your rehearsal dinner, Derek." Silence. 6 seconds. I counted. "That was Dad's call." "I know. So you're punishing us?" "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just not hiding. There's a difference." He hung up. He didn't say goodbye. He just stopped being on the phone. My mother called that afternoon. I let it ring. She left a voicemail that was, I'll give her this, almost vulnerable. Almost. She said she was proud of me. She said she looked at the Marfa house online and it was beautiful. She said, "I think we haven't done a great job of keeping up with your life, and I'd like to change that." Then, right at the end, she added, "I wish you'd told us about these things so we could be prepared." Prepared, like my success was weather, something to brace for. I did not call her back that day, or the next. A week later, my father sent a text. Read the article. Very impressive work, Claire. Your mother and I would like to see the Marfa house, if that's possible. Or the studio. Either one. I read it while sitting in my car outside a lumber yard. It was not an apology. It was not an acknowledgement of the email that told me the rehearsal dinner was intimate enough to exclude me, or the cake tasting that outranked my magazine cover, or the years of Claire draws things. It was just a hand, extended slightly. Not all the way, just enough to see if I'd reach back. I waited 9 days. Then I wrote, I'd like that. Let me know when you're planning to come through Austin. Not forgiveness. I don't know if that's coming. I don't know if it needs to. Some things just don't resolve into neat endings. Some things just become the ground you stand on. Solid enough to hold you, uneven enough to remind you it's real. My sister-in-law sent me a message I wasn't expecting. It said, I looked up your work after the dinner. The house in Marfa made me cry, and I don't even know why. I'd love to meet you properly sometime. I wrote back, I'd love that too. Derek has not contacted me again. Here is what I know. I spent years building in rooms my family never entered. I sent invitations they declined. I designed spaces full of light for strangers, while the people who raised me described my work in the dimmest possible terms. And none of that stopped a single line I drew from becoming real. I'm sitting in my studio right now. It's early, maybe 6:15. The sun hasn't fully committed yet. There's a set of blueprints on my drafting table for a house I'm designing in the hill country, and the clients want a reading room with a window that faces west so they can watch the light change every evening. I know exactly how to build that window. On the wall behind my desk, I pinned the Architectural Digest page, not because I need proof. I know what I've built. I know what it cost. I know every late night and every unanswered phone call and every holiday where nobody thought to include me and I was too tired to include myself. I pinned it there because on mornings like this one, when the studio is quiet and the pencil is sharp and the work is just beginning, I want to remember that this is real, that I made it from a place no one was watching. If you're in the middle of your own version of this, designing, writing, building, making something honest in a room where nobody from your life bothers to knock, I want to tell you something directly. The work is the thing. Not the applause, not the phone call that finally comes, not the parent who finally says the right words 10 years too late. The work, the thing your hands know how to do when the rest of the world is asleep. Build for the light. Build because the structure is sound and the window is placed on purpose, and somewhere in a room you haven't imagined yet, someone is going to walk in and feel the air change and know, without anyone telling them, that someone cared about this. Someone was here. That's enough. That has always been enough. The blueprints are waiting. The studio is mine, and I don't need anyone's invitation to stand in the rooms I've built for myself.